Olá, sejam muito bem-vindos a mais um vídeo para o nosso canal de Flow. Hoje, numa versão online, eu tive o prazer de conversar com o Amir Rashad. Ele é CEO e fundador da plataforma Timber Exchange. É uma plataforma líder global em inteligência de mercado para o setor de madeira, Softwood. A Timber Exchange transforma um mar de dados quantitativos em insights qualitativos. Eles rastreiam desde a produção e os níveis de inventário em portos estratégicos, como Xangai e Alexandria, até a variação de preços em 26 mercados-chave. Vamos conhecer um pouco das engrenagens que movem a economia da madeira ao redor do mundo. Em um cenário como esse, de volatilidade extrema, ter a informação certa no momento exato não é mais um diferencial, é a questão de sobrevivência. Aproveite a conversa com o Amir e nos mandem sugestões aqui para um próximo episódio. Hello, Amir. Hope you are doing very well. Really appreciate your time here with us, with Flow Brazil. I'm sure we'll have a great time today telling everything about the market. You are the reference, really expert, and I'm sure people in Brazil will love to hear from you what is going on this softwood timber market around the globe. Thank you very much for being here with us, Amir.
Thank you so much for having me, Gustavo. It's a pleasure indeed. And hello to everyone in Brazil from a sunny but cold Stockholm, Sweden.
Great. So, Amir, I think we can start already with your information. I will explain to our people here in Brazil about your market intelligence. So please bring us some numbers, tell us what you see in the market, and let's show to the Brazilian people a kind of data you have that they can use on their decisions and how important it is to have the right data at the right moment.
Yes, absolutely. So this market, unfortunately, the timber market that we're in is extremely volatile right now. And it suffers from being opaque, meaning non-transparent. And it's this non-transparency, we believe, that causes buyers to not have the confidence to go out and buy and build inventory. And we are here to solve that problem. And we try every single month to tell the story of the market through quantitative and qualitative data. And we have some really interesting figures for you right now. So we prepared for you a list of the top 10 lumber exporters last year. We see that Canada is still at the very top, followed by Russia and Sweden. And what's noteworthy is that the top 4 markets now represent 51%, but they used to represent 59%. And the top 10 exporting markets used to represent 76%, but now they represent 83%. So this means that the global market is becoming more diversified, actually. And that's good for buyers and good for the stability of the market. Less concentration. On the import side, the opposite is happening. The US is still the world's biggest timber market by volume, and China is quickly catching up at 26 million cubic meters, followed by the UK at 7 million. And here the opposite is happening. The top 5 markets used to represent 46% of volume. Now it's 56%. And the top 10 markets used to be 72%. Now they are 74%. It's really, really interesting when you think about it, meaning that the importing markets, they are becoming bigger, they are buying more, and fewer markets, fewer purchasing and importing markets represent a bigger piece of the pie. Meaning all the exporters that we saw on the last slide, they need to compete heavier in these markets, and these markets play a bigger role globally.
Yeah, we can see, we noticed in Brazil, how we have diversified the markets, and we are not even on this list right now. And yeah, we are getting new markets every day, so that make a lot of sense for us here.
This is for importers, so we need to go back to exporters. Brazil is not on the list. Wow.
Yeah,
What happened?
yeah, we are not even there.
Wow.
But we are diversifying because we used to concentrate our exports in very few markets, and now we can see we have much more destination we can explore.
Hmm. And one of the most important things in my job is to understand how is global production changing and global supply demand, right? And we read in the news a lot about curtailments, meaning production, a reduction in production. And it's good that and the problem that we have seen is that production has been too high, which has affected, which has meant that there's too much volume in the market, which has led to low prices. So it's good when companies reduce their production. It's good. However, the problem that we've seen is that when one company reduces production, another country increases production, meaning that production is just jumping from one country to the next. And we did an analysis in June last year. We saw then that the global change was negative 3.8 million cubic meters. And according to the United Nations, global softwood production around the world is around 319 million cubic meters.
319 million cubic meters.
Yes, sir. Which meant that the global change is around minus 1.2%. And that's enough to 1.5, 2 or 2.5%. That's enough to switch from a buyer's market to a seller's market. Very, very small margins. However, as we said, that demand is, or production is just moving from one country to the next, right? So what happened is that the US increased its production quite a lot, by as much as 4%. And that meant that the US increase alone offset almost everybody else's reductions in production, which means that at the end of the year, production has only changed negative 0.7%. And that's not enough, looking worldwide, to create a hungry buyer's market, unfortunately. And one really interesting thing that we also track is, of course, inventory levels. And here we can see in Shanghai, for example, or Taisang, both the inventory level in blue and in green, the monthly consumption level. And now they have a little more than 2.5 months of inventory, and that's quite good, because a year or so ago, they had almost 3 months of inventory, because it's not only the inventory, which is the important, it's how fast they need to replenish it, which is even more important to track.
So here we are talking about only timber, no logs, right?
Not logs, no sir.
Okay, considering that China is the second largest buyer imported of lumber in the world, that seems to be quite interesting because it shows that they will probably need to buy more lumber, right?
This is around the stable volume that
Okay.
they have. And this volume mostly comes from other countries, mostly comes from South America, North America, and Europe, and a little bit of Russian. But Russia comes a lot by train from the north. Also, what's happening is very important is Tokyo, the inventory in Japan. And that inventory is usually between 100 and 150,000 cubic meters in the port. And it reached quite a high level during Q4 last year. And it's been recovering and been on a slight downward trend. So we are right in the middle, but it does cause a little bit of pressure. And the majority of this pressure actually comes from the Russians, because Japan is one of the few countries that hasn't sanctioned doing business with Russia. So they are pushing quite aggressively their timber there. And we
Okay, they
need
can keep buying from Russia.
Yes. And one thing we need to remember with Japan as well is that they have an aging population, so that they are building less. And also what's happening with Japan is that their currency, the yen, is not as strong as it used to be. So they are preferring now to buy domestically produced timber, which not many people know about. So the imports, so firstly, the market is becoming smaller, but also these imports, for example, from Germany or Finland, they are competing against domestically produced, which of course is cheaper.
Okay.
A huge potential market, I believe, is Japan, is Alexandria, Egypt, for Brazil. And I believe there's zero tariff on Brazilian exports to Egypt. So that's a huge competitive advantage, if I remember correctly. And the Egyptian market works in the following way. It usually has between 500,000 and 1 million cubic meters in inventory in Alexandria, the big port city, where there's almost 200 timber warehouses.
Wow.
Yes, in one cluster, side by side, neighbor by neighbor. And when it's 500, the market is very hungry for timber and want to buy more at any price. When it reaches 1 million, the market says, up, I'm full, I don't need more.
Okay.
However, here we see that the global inventory has fallen, right, to almost 500,000. But it's kind of a false flag, unfortunately, because there have been contracted volumes, but because of Iran war and other shipping delays and a cold winter in Europe, which is the main supply in North Europe, which is the main supplier, the vessels haven't been able to enter the ports to ship these contracted volumes. So there's a lot waiting in the ports to go into Egypt, to be shipped to Egypt. So this number on paper, it looks good, but if you don't know the story, it could lead to something bad, unfortunately, down the line. It could very quickly lead to Egypt being oversupplied by the summer.
Understand. Yeah, we have seen that happening in other Middle East countries. A lot of reduction in terms of consumption, of course, because all this cargo is still in the middle of the way somewhere. And that is really important to understand, yeah, because otherwise, as you said, can be oversupplied, and of course, price will drop and will be a big mess.
Another market which we track, where I believe there's huge opportunities for Brazilian exporters and sawmills, is Casablanca, Morocco. Because Morocco mainly buys from Scandinavia and from Central Europe, like Germany and Austria. And the total volume there is, there in Casablanca, we use a rating system. Currently, it's 3 out of 10. So it's very, very low levels, but it's for the same reasons as Egypt. There's congestion in the ports. There haven't been vessels have been delayed, and there's contracted cargo which hasn't been picked up. So this will probably rise when the situation is solved to a 5, maybe even a 6.
Okay.
And the flagship of what we do is what we call the Global Timber Price Index by Timber Exchange, where we track the price of 170 timber products in 26 timber markets. And we track what's the price if I order 1 container, 4 containers, or more than 4 containers. And the difference between these prices is what we call the small order premium. How much more should I charge as a seller for, or if I'm a buyer, how much more should I pay for a small order than a big order? And what we've seen in the past is that it's been historically, before all these tariff wars and even physical wars, unfortunately, is 10%. But what we've seen over time is that it's narrowed, it's down in many markets, unfortunately, to 0 or just 1%. And during last year, it was even negative. It was cheaper to buy a small volume than a big volume. Can you imagine, Gustavo?
Okay, that is really interesting. Yeah. Well, 170 key timber products,
Yes,
26 key markets. That is really, really a lot of information, right? And
yes, it's
become more and more precisely every month. That is really good to know.
yes, it's extremely useful, and we have a lot of companies contributing and using this data, and it's done according to US and EU competition law, and we're just very proud and we're very grateful for the support that we get.
People here in Brazil, they can also participate on that, this global timber price index, if they want.
Of course. And as thanks to everyone, when they give to all the participants, we will donate food from our pockets. As thanks to you, the contributor, even if you just give a price, no money, we will donate food from our pocket to those most in need. So if you are a contributor for 1 year with us, on your behalf, we will donate every single month after 1 year. It ends up being 1,000 warm meals per one contributor, even if it's one price.
Well, that is really, really good example how to move forward. Really interesting. So the factories here in Brazil can really help with the numbers, and you're going to help a lot of people that need food. This is great.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We try to have a good social impact here, and we genuinely care.
Really appreciate that.
And so, what do the numbers tell us? Well, last month, in the last report, we saw that 62% of products increased month on month, and that the average change was 3.4%. So it's increasing quite a lot, or the speed of change is increasing quite a lot, as we know. But what's interesting is, where is the change happening? In Latin America, oops, how do I draw on the screen? In Latin America, the increase was 11%, in Asia 6%, in Europe also 6%, but in MENA only 1%. And that's partly because the market, due to the Middle East war, was so paralyzed that not so many contracts were done, there was delays, and the big changes will be reflected in the next survey, which is published in 10 days' time.
Okay, so basically nobody knows what is going on.
Yes. Because the war started at the end of the survey period.
Yeah, we have seen that people just paralyzed because nobody really know how to move.
And the mills didn't even know what will happen, because they were just being informed by the shipping lines. Is there capacity? What's the surcharge? How much extra do I have to pay? Talking to the lawyers, just stacking problems. But now a lot of these things have been resolved.
And you think that from Brazil, we have a better opportunity to export to Middle East, comparing with the traditional European manufacturers, for example? How fast they will solve their logistic problems?
They have solved it to a large degree, especially to North Africa. Because to go to North Africa, they don't need to go through the Suez Canal or the Strait of Hormuz, right? But so this is one very important point you make. So the market is difficult for everyone, but I genuinely believe there will be, and there are, huge arbitrage opportunities right now for both buyers and sellers. And that opportunity only comes if you explore the market and if you know where to look and how to benchmark. So at the same time, these Saudi, UAE countries, Qatar, Kuwait, etc., they buy 1% of global supply, 3 billion cubic meters. That needs to go somewhere. It's not a small volume. And this includes also volume from South America as well. I believe half of that volume is from South America. So there's going to be a lot of changes happening. And for Brazil to enter, for example, North Africa, Brazil needs to have capacities and affordable freight and quick freight. But at least affordable freight so the CIF price can compete with the established market players, which are Europeans and in some MENA markets also, mainly in Egypt, the Russians.
Yeah, affordable freight will be difficult. Right now, shipping lines, they just charge. Well, they are keeping the freight more or less stable. But as you said, they are adding new fees every month, like war surcharge, bunker surcharge, emergency risk. So that is quite a challenge to how to pricify the lumber. That is really a big question.
And also one thing which the Brazilians could do is if you come together and you charter together a vessel for that goes to North Africa and unloads in 2 or 3 ports, Morocco, Algeria, and Egypt, then you are not reliant on the external shipping lines. You control yourself, your future, and you create your own opportunities and you create your own logistics.
That is a challenge. Make Brazilian suppliers get together and ship that.
Oh, the Scandinavians are also competitors, but they still manage to.
Yeah, maybe we need to talk with the Scandinavians and understand how they make it.
Yes.
That would be really interesting for Brazil, indeed.
Yes. No, but that's the mentality that you have to have in order to enter these markets. Because if the freight's too expensive, it's not that the freight isn't possible. It's that it's the existing commercial solutions by the shipping lines are not built for timber, and it's not built for the CIF picture it's not price friendly for timber. We're not shipping iPhones, right? So step by step, maybe something is possible, and that will be good for if Brazil can diversify, if Brazil can export more. It's good for everyone, not for just one company or one person. It's good for everyone.
That will open the market for everybody.
And most importantly, it's opening the door for Brazil and promoting Brazilian products in markets that haven't received much Brazilian cargo for a very, very long time. Chile used to be, for example, in Egypt, Chile used to be one of the market leaders there 20, 30 years ago. Now it's completely disappeared. So the new generation of importers, they don't even remember South American lumber, Taeda, Eliotti, Radiata. They don't even remember.
It's not even part of their conversation.
No, so these are some things you maybe, Gustavo, can organize with the embassies, the ones in Brazil and the ones in North Africa, to make events to educate the market about Brazilian timber.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. We was very not comfortable, but of course we was focused on the United States and Asian countries. So definitely Middle East still have a long way to go and a lot of work from the manufacturers here. But we need to be there.
Yep. And what's interesting then is to see what was moving and where. So the products that did the best were SPF, CLS number 3, packaging KD, whitewood, soft falling, thicker dimensions 47 to 63, as well as redwood 50 by 150, for example, to markets like China, Germany, Baltics, and the UK.
Mhm.
And some of the products that lost the most were CLS 38, Nordic 6, and Taruki to Holland, Pakistan, Israel, and South Korea. And I personally believe having this level of insight, knowing how much is being produced on a monthly level, on a monthly basis, what are inventory levels, and how are prices moving, is incredibly valuable when you to benchmark, to compare, to plan.
Absolutely, we can see that Brazil participate a lot on this packaging and on
Mhm.
this 38 millimeter.
Mm.
So we can see both very clear. One is the winner, another one is the loser, and that will make the manufacturers here decide where to go. Yeah?
Yeah.
If we have this information, like you are showing us. So that is really important to demonstrate to the mills here about how important it is to have the right data.
Yes. What else do we have for you? Well, the U.S. biggest market, or Brazil's biggest market, used to be the U.S., right?
Right.
So here we can see, based on customs data, that's very, very fresh, March 2026, so very new, how much volume was exported from Germany and Sweden to the US. And what we see is Germany is exporting more and more over time. In February, there was a small, let's try to draw on the screen here. Oops.
If there were a small drop, and
Yeah.
then we can see March again.
Yeah. Germany is increasing over time. Used to be
Mhm.
very low around here. And Sweden was slow, but increased quite a lot. But ever since Q1, it's dropping, decreasing, cutting back. And this is the kind of information you need to know that, okay, Sweden is decreasing, means they need to place this volume somewhere else. This volume, where will it go? It will go to the top 10 markets that we saw on the first slide. And how are prices in those markets? And from that, you can start to make a plan yourself. And how can I compete if you're a Brazilian sawmill or trader? Even if it's just packaging. Packaging has huge demand in Europe and all around the world.
Yeah, that is the
Very,
main
very,
item we export from Brazil.
yeah. And is India a big market for Brazil, Gustavo?
Right, yeah, India is becoming one of the main destinations after all these tariff wars, all these changes in the market, as you mentioned. India is really important right now for softwood, fine lumber from Brazil, and we can see that on the statistics right now. This is moving more and more.
Okay.
It's a very price-sensitive market, but with a huge demand.
Very good. And what we see here is German volumes are very up or down, of course, which is the red line. But during the first few months of the year, there's a slight downward trend. We have Russia, which is definitely on a downward trend, just going down if you look over the long term, and Brazil, which is on a slight downward trend as well, you can say. So this means that the Indian market is shrinking, at least in the beginning of the year. They're buying less. And we don't track the inventory level for India, but it could be because there has been a lot of inventory, but also it could be because the log market is affecting the lumber import and the lumber market. And
Yeah,
that's
we have seen that New Zealand now has some benefit with India, and they'll probably export more and more logs.
and that's kind of the problem. I don't know if Brazil exports logs to India, but I know Uruguay does. And I know the New Zealand sells both logs and lumber to China. So in the case of New Zealand sawmills are kind of competing with themselves in China. that's a huge problem for them. Of course, they can make more if there's no export of New Zealand logs to China.
Mhm.
So I believe and I know packaging is huge in India, so there's a huge potential for Brazilians over there.
Absolutely. It's a new market that is already consolidated.
Yes. What else do we have? We were discussing China just now. China is buying less from Russia. It's considerably less from Russia. 26% less from Russia
It's a lot.
during Q1 of this year. And I mentioned to you earlier that there's been logistics problems from the Nordics to Egypt. Well, here we can see it black on white. 55% less volume has been shipped year on year.
Wow, that is a lot of lumber.
Yes.
And do you think this lumber is still around, or they
Oh yes,
definitely stopped?
Still around. Maybe some of it has gone to other markets. Some of it was not produced due to curtailments, but a lot is still waiting imports. Germany exported during January and February this year, 22% less compared to 2025. So we believe there is a curtailment of around 20% now in Germany. This is relevant for you guys. So looking in value terms, Chile is shipping 21% less during Q1 this year versus 2025. 21% less.
This is really, yeah, it's a big number.
Yeah. And of
And we
course,
have seen a big on this last month. And well, basically the war is affecting everyone, right? It's that is really shaking the world.
yes,
We have seen volumes reducing and not really necessary people stop, but it's really changing everything.
yes, yes. And we have the data to see exports to the Saudi Arabia and UAE, for example, from Chile and Brazil. It's essentially zero. Or what do you see?
Yeah, that's it. Stop it. Basically, stop it. Everything. We don't see not a really lack of demand. People are interested, but we just cannot ship.
Yeah.
The freights are 3, 4, 5 times more, and we are not sure if the vessels will arrive or not. So that is driving all this lumber to other markets, which basically is making the price drop.
Yeah.
And that is a big mess right now in these markets. It's not really the most important for us, but it's enough to shake all these other alternative countries.
Yeah. But there is some good news, Gustavo.
Okay,
In
let's
France,
go for that.
In France, they are building now 20% more. In Germany, 7% more.
Okay.
In the US, unfortunately, there is there's a drop in housing starts. And in the US, there is a lot more sellers of homes than buyers of homes. Around 50%, or what is it, 30% more sellers than buyers. And this change happened, oops, how do I, okay, there. Happened here in October 2023. So it's been a problem for a long time.
It's not just because the war or something sporadic. It's already a problem for many years.
Yes, we can what's it called? We can blame Biden on this. For once, Trump is right.
Okay. Yeah, they will share this. And Europe is starting to recover. That is really a good news.
And
Definitely.
the biggest markets in Europe. And in Asia, We see also great news. Korea is increasing housing starts a lot.
Mhm.
And there is one problem, which is of course the biggest market in Asia, which is China.
Mhm.
China has been fighting. How I want to say this very clearly. In a market where prices are dropping, buyers are afraid to enter because nobody wants to enter in a falling market, right?
They will wait and see how far it goes.
They will wait until it stabilizes, then they will enter. So China has been fighting with real estate drop prices on an annual basis between 2 and 6%. The worst drop was in October 2024, minus 6% year to date or year to year. And then ever since then, it's been slowing down, which is good. Until August of last year, it was at minus 2%. And I was saying that we are probably 9 months away from plus minus zero. The problem, Gustavo, is that the opposite happened. The price drop started to increase again. And now year to date, it's minus 4% in per end of March 2026. So as long as there's bleeding, there cannot be recovery.
And they will keep waiting.
Yes.
Yeah, that is really important to see the numbers. We can definitely see that the prices will be under pressure in China.
Yes.
Not
So,
least
part
to-
in China, you have partly a weak market because of this, but you also have pressured supply and cheap supply because of Russia.
Okay.
So it's very hard for anybody else to come in and make a meaningful impact. It's not worth it to compete.
Hmm. Yeah, we can definitely see that the world is not stable.
Yeah.
We have this Russia war. We have now this Middle East problem. So we really need to be fast, yeah, and act very fast. See
Yes.
the trends like that. It's really important to understand that China will be under pressure in terms of price. So definitely it's a destination that people need to avoid. You have demonstrated which items are going up, which items are going down. So that also helps the manufacturers here understand what to produce and where to go.
Yes. Yes. But there is some good news, Gustavo, that I want to finish with. So we make a survey every 2 months. We ask 100 market leaders, both buyers and sellers, how do you see prices developing over the next 3 months in your home market and your primary international markets? And it's worth noting here, these are not just anybody. These 100 people jointly represent 30 million cubic meters in
Wow.
production and buying power.
They know exactly what they are talking about.
Yes. So here we can see, that 75% per mid-March, of course, a lot has happened since then, believe that prices will increase over the next 3 months, 75%. And a minority of around 10% believe in falling prices. And it's a huge shift comparing to September 25, when 28% believed in falling prices, 25% believed in, or increasing prices, 28%, 25% believed in falling, and the majority believed in stability. And what's very interesting is one of the really cool indicators that we track is what is the global inventory of wood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we put this one in front of this one, we see directly higher inventory level directly leads to more negative sentiment. Lower inventory level globally leads directly to more positive sentiment. So this is the global view, but we can narrow down, Gustavo, and see also on a USA basis, and the USA is a very important market for Brazil, of course. And Here we can see the percentage of buyers and sellers on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, meaning the Chicago Stock Exchange for lumber futures. What percentage believe in increasing versus falling prices? Here, per end of April, the number of positive, meaning the blue line of industrial companies, sawmills, traders, wholesalers, and construction companies are positive to increasing prices. But what makes this unique is, because this trend has continued for a long time now, what makes this unique is the green line is matching the sentiment. And the green line shows what percentage of investors and banks believe in the same. Usually, there is a bigger gap, or they go in opposite directions, like this. But now, for the first time in, I don't remember even, a very long time, they are almost right next to each other. So it's very good news.
Okay, that is really interesting, because even in the middle of all this war and conflicts, and nobody can really see too much, but the feeling still positive. So
Yes.
they see that the inventory is going down and prices can go up, and that demand can also increase. That is really interesting to see. And these lumber futures numbers show exactly that. Very interesting, very interesting. I'm sure that anyone here in Brazil will love to see these numbers and try to work based on that. Extremely nice. Yeah, very good, very good. And so the general feeling is good. At the end, we can see people are positive. And there is something we see that can change that. Maybe if this Middle East war keep for a long time, how fast you see this market can move?
How do you mean?
How fast things can change. I mean, we had this war situation when everything stopped, and people, do you have any conversation about that with most of these producers as well? How do you see this war conflict in terms of consumption and prices?
Yes. So I believe there will be further curtailments worldwide, because the global demand simply isn't there. But
Mhm.
the main thing now is having some sense of normalcy, some sense of confidence in the market, so that buyers have the confidence to go out and buy and build inventory. We do 40 webinars per year, almost one per week. And we discuss with sawmills. We're doing next this week Norway, next week USA, the week after that Germany, then after that importers in India, Pakistan, China, Egypt, Morocco, Saudi. We go all around the world. It's really I'm blessed to have a really great job. But to answer your question, is buyers right now are not building the inventory. They're buying only what they need when they need it.
Okay.
They're careful. So in order to bring back normalcy and to build demand, production needs to go up, and there needs to be more confidence that there is stability in demand in the future.
Okay, okay. That is great. Amir, I really appreciate all this information. And tell us how these guys here in Brazil can register. Give us your website and tell us how we can access that, and how they should do to get this information from you every month. You have like this information every month or every 2, 3 months. How can they receive that information?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a platform, timber.exchange, where you can register free of charge, and you can see some small limited data. But to get everything that you saw today and much, much more, you need to have a paid account. And of course, any one of your friend is our friend. So we can extend some very generous discounts, of course.
Okay, that's good. We're gonna make sure people in Brazil understand that they will have a special price.
Very special price.
So, Amir, this is our first conversation that we are planning to have every month. I really appreciate your time and your information. And I'm sure that next month we'll do that again, bring more information and see what is going on in the market. will be a great time to have you here with us at Woodflow. I hope people in Brazil can enjoy a lot in our information, register your website, and make sure they understand what is going on. Yeah, that we see a lot of opportunities and where to go, where not to go. It's really interesting. You are doing a great job. You know, Woodflow is a big fan of Timber Exchange. We are following a long time, and it's a really pleasure to talk with you here and make this first video of many others. Thank you very much, Amir, again, and we see you soon next month.
Thank you so much, my friend, and goodbye, everyone. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.